morning, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to 2020. I'm trying to spruce up the show a little bit, have a bit of a spring cleaning, music-wise. Did some holiday music during the holidays. Had some COG music earlier now, but he's kind of that music being associated with the happy hour. So I was like, what's a good morning kind of start of the day? And I love, you guys seem to be into it too, so that's great. Getting some positive vibes about the jazz choice in the morning. And I also really like that as well. So yeah, I threw in some jazz songs, changed up the transition. I'll just quickly show it to you guys. Yeah, so if you're interested in knowing anything about the artists, and go check that out. Otherwise, I'm going to keep this set of music for the jazzy thing until I get sick of it, I guess. So hello, happy Sunday. Welcome to you guys, wherever it is, whenever it is, wherever it is you are. Hope you are having a good day, whatever that means for you. And I'm realizing I'm a little bit overlit here by the sunlight. It's actually getting sunny out, so let me try to stop that a bit. Maybe this isn't gonna, I'm probably gonna end up doing more harm than good. Is that gonna work? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, that looks good. Still have to, every time I don't have a fixed setup, I have to redo it every single time I do a show. Okay, guys, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, first I thought what we would do is have a little bit of a morning intro, and it's a little bit much to jump into Trump. And I think I could probably have the title, What Idiocy Has Trump Done This Week, every week for this show. And it would always be topical. So it was, a pretty good guess. But let's start off with something a little more gentle, a little less stressful. And hi, Angus. Hi, Natalie. Hope you guys are doing well. I know I tweeted this out. I didn't really send it out anywhere else on Facebook, so might be some late people. I was going. I was running a little bit late today. And that's because I'll bring us on to our first subject. You're just gonna have to look at my face for a while. I don't really have anything to show you yet, so I'll just talk to the camera, talk to you guys. I've started actually a course on. Trying to get rid of my verbal pauses. I started a course on understanding Creative Commons licenses. And for those of you who are YouTubers, you probably have some vague familiarity with the concept of Creative Commons licenses. But for those of you who don't, I will give you a little overview. But first, going back, this is like a 10-week course. And yes, Aussies represent. Nice. Thanks, Lucky Wanderer. But puppies, the puppies are gone. Puppies got copyright claimed, actually, speaking of copyright. So I'm doing this course on Creative Commons licenses. And if you're a YouTube creator, you will know that, for instance, the music that I've just used, some of it on the YouTube channel has to be under a YouTube Creative Commons license. In fact, I wonder if I can get into my history here. I can just go have a look on that. I don't think so. I don't think I can find the right one. I know it's in my window, ironically. I don't have it. YouTube Studio? No, that's anything. Anyway, the point of Creative Commons license, let me get to that really fast, is before Creative Commons licenses, there was just copyright. And when you created a work, you had exclusive copyright over it, almost sort of as a default, but you could also go through and file a copyright to make sure. Yeah, YouTube Audio Library. Actually, that's what I'm going to search for. Thank you. Then I'll bring up you guys on the screen so you can see. So there was only one form of copyright, and that was to give creators, any kind of creators, by that I mean, rights over what they create. And that's cool. Like, obviously, if somebody develops something, that's a representation of their intellectual work. That's their intellectual property, we would call it. They should have some protections over it. But copyright, of course, is not forever. Copyright eventually expires, and things go into the public domain. So old music, lots of old music now, is already in the public domain. And quite a lot of, so that was sort of the structure you had. You had copyright, and you could get copyright from the person who held it if you wanted to use a piece of music or use a piece of art. And then there was also a little bit of the principle of fair use, which is that if you are somehow reacting to or educating, you're not basically trying to profit commercially from using somebody else's ideas. So let's say Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup painting. If you wanted to take that and repurpose it by taking the soup cans and changing it to something else, and the colors maybe to be thematic, and so it's basically kind of like a spoof of that, but you're transforming it into something completely different but referencing it. There's some scope there in the law. But what there wasn't was any systematic way for somebody to say, this is mine and I own it, but you can use it. So this place where you could both retain your copyright but not automatically be given an exclusive copyright. And that's good for, the open science community, really, or the open source community. There might be people, and I was saying, not everybody has the luxury of being able to just donate things and either take tips for them, like sometimes you see with ad blocker, they'll say, hey, we're doing this for free, but could you pay us? Or just outright, give it out. I do a lot of things that end up being open source because I have a full-time job. My job is in some ways to produce that content that other people can then have for free. But not everyone can do that. So we need commercial licensing. We need, these other forms of copyright. But the story of copyright, the story of Creative Commons, we're just going to do this because I have an assignment due. And we're going to go through this because I'm going to have to talk about this. I'm making a little video through a program called Doodly, which is fun. I wonder if I can show you guys that. So I wanted to tell you the story of Creative Commons licenses really quick because it's good rehearsal for me. I'll actually quickly show you, if I can, show you Doodly as well because it's kind of a cool program. It's expensive, but it's pretty cool. Righty daddy daddy, you can see that there. Yeah, okay. So I'm starting on this homework assignment, which is about the history of Creative Commons licenses. And I'll just show you. So Doodly is a software where you can create sort of like a fake animation effect where it looks like something's being drawn. Now, I'm going to say in the preview version, there's a little less of that. Than in the actual outputted video. But we'll have a little look at this as I explain it. I'm sorry that you have an itchy mosquito bite on your foot, Nat. Boo. Sounds like I did a legal eagle course on copyright. Starting it. Yeah, we're starting it. And, right, so basically the video is going to go along the lines of, you might have seen the phrase Creative Commons when you've looked at a Wikipedia entry or maybe on a YouTube video as a way to license your YouTube video. But where did this all come about? What does it refer to? And then I'll go on to talk about what Creative Commons are. This idea that they are based in copyright. So they are a way to retain intellectual property for creators. But at the same time, it's a license that allows people different types of reuse. Might be a completely open resharing of content. It might be only for educational, not commercial purposes. It might include attribution of the author every single time. Or it might say that, you can't make derivatives of this. You have to use the whole work. But at least it does allow for sharing. So the history of the history of Creative Commons starts when Steamboat Willie in the 1990s was about to expire as a piece into the public domain. So copyright, like I said, it doesn't last forever. At some point it will expire, and then all of that content moves into what's called the public domain, which basically means anyone can use it. An example that you could think of is Sherlock Holmes was for a very long time kept out of the public domain. They found ways around the copyright to keep the sort of using the property and ensuring it again and again. But I finally, I think, is 100% in the public domain. So Steamboat Willie, the first sound cartoon created by Walt Disney's company, or for whatever it was at the time, had the copyright was about to expire. And it's interesting how every time the copyright is about to expire on Steamboat Willie, suddenly there's an interest in extending copyright for a further 20 years. So in this case, it was Sonny Bono, the former artist, who sponsored a piece of legislation that would extend it from 50 years after the death of the creator to 70 years after the death of the creator. And they extended it. So right now, Steamboat Willie is not due to come into the public domain until 2024. And you'll have to see in 2023 whether or not Disney puts a lot of money into trying to extend copyright to 90 years after the death of the creator. Well, they went ahead and wrote this law that extended it from 50 to 70 years. That was questioned by a guy named, I should know this by now, Lessig. Yeah, Lawrence Lessig. There's two guys involved. And Lawrence Lessig was an attorney he's a professor at Stanford University, I believe. And he really has this principle, like he really believed in the idea that things are meant to go into the public domain. They're not meant to be, copyrighted forever and ever and ever. Eventually, this intellectual material is meant to be a public good. He found a web developer whose entire web design was about moving things from public domain online so people could access them. And the two of them sued the United States in a court case called Eldridge, because the guy's name was Eldred v. Ashcroft. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court held that Congress had the ability, the right to extend copyright as it saw fit. But I don't want to stand for Sonny Bono. He's trash. But he is important to the story insofar as, it was his bill. It was sort of named with him. So they had this idea, we need to find a way around this, that we can't just wait for copyright to expire for things to be able to be used for public use. Sorry, I'm going to hit play now because this took a little bit longer in my explanation than it's meant to in my instructional video. And, this is the part where I talk about the lawsuit. Harvard! See, I put it in the video so I wouldn't have to remember it. So they were kind of bummed out that they lost the case, but they decided, well, that's not going to stop us. We're going to find a way to do this on our own. So what they did was they established a community, a nonprofit group, that is creating copyright licenses, but creating copyright licenses with the intention that the material is supposed to be used. And one of those options is to do a CC, Creative Commons 0, or it's a public domain. You make it and it's open, anyone can use it, remix it, do whatever they want. There are other more restrictive licenses. For instance, you can put your stuff in there in such a way that all someone has to do is attribute you. So if you if I have some lectures on academia.edu, and I think they're actually under the wrong Creative Commons license. I should probably update that because it's no derivatives. But I'm also not planning on ever suing anybody ever who uses my content. So I should just make it CC BY or CC attribution. But you can put restrictions on it, like not for commercial use, or whether or not people can mix it in with other things, or if it has to stand alone. There's a lot of flexibility in how you as a creator of content can license your work so that people use it in a way that you intend or you would like it to be used. And those licenses have to be developed in law, and because they don't just exist. And the Creative Commons group, the foundation, is set up to do that. So where we stand today is that since the early 2000s, Creative Commons as a group has become a place that is a good source for licenses on licenses for open source use, as well as creating community of people who are in support of the concept of open information and sharing things, not just a sort of traditional copyright commercial standard license for the public good. So that's it. That's actually a good dry run. We've just done a practice homework of my video. That's what we did. Hey, I'm multitasking. So I'm testing out my Doodly video. I'm testing out my knowledge and my script for when I have to record this later. And I'm sharing some information with you guys, just in case you are ever interested in or know someone who's confused by the concept of Creative Commons licenses. So there you go. Is everyone bored to death? It's okay if you are. I'm doing this show more for me than you guys today. Yeah, I think it's especially in the digital age that we're in, the ability to share music, share any intellectual work is really important. So Creative Commons is something I highly support, and I want to get to know more about it a sort of formal, systematic way. I'm actually quite familiar. Someone pointed out here, there was some, I think, sounds like I did a Legal Eagles course on copyright. It's not technically supposed to, we're not meant to do any legal advice. It's very much like, you will not be a lawyer, you will not be qualified to give legal advice at the end of this course. However, you will be familiar with the issues, kind of thing. And definitely as a YouTube content creator, I think it's incredibly advantageous to know what your rights are in terms of use and access, also resources of where you can find public domain or Creative Commons materials to work with, and then also how to cite them so the people who did make that effort get their proper acknowledgement. And I know maybe it seems like a kind of boring technical thing, but in terms of the movement of ideas and the sharing of ideas, it really was a big step forward that gave people more creativity more flexibility than ever before. So it's interesting, good to know. Also, a thing I always disliked about Disney, so very capitalism. The whole thing is about this. They have the weight, and it's worth so much money to them. Like, they have the political weight in contributions, and also they leverage that family-friendly perception that they cultivate very much, and they can just buy their way into another 20 years of monetizing Steamboat Willie, and it's certainly worth their time and effort to make money for another 20 years on that, rather than put it into the public domain so that everyone can use it. Makes me angry the whole legal industry is sprung up around taking people down over spurious copyright claims. I agree. If you guys are familiar with Leonard French, the copyright attorney. So this is also another, YouTube is awesome. Another thing about sharing is because it's not really a Creative Commons license, technically it's fair use, but Leonard French, I don't know what that one is, but I think that's Lawful Masses. Yep, this one. He's a copyright attorney, like a proper copyright attorney, and he does really interesting and good videos on sometimes legal dramas, but with an eye toward issues of fair use and copyright. So I actually have, as you can see, I subscribed to this channel. Nerd! It's but as a creator, it's important to know, as lawsuits move forward, what courts are deciding, so that we know whether we can be more permissive or less permissive in how we incorporate other people's materials, or how to cover ourselves legally when we do. And generally, you're not going to get the chances of you getting DCMA'd by a fellow YouTuber is pretty low, but there is, if you do a news summary show where you want to use news clips from different commercial broadcast stations, say in the US or the UK, and they want to do a takedown notice, it's important that you know your rights and the state laws where you are, so that you can properly defend yourself and do appeals to YouTube on that stuff. So if you're interested in the idea of how intellectual property can be properly, used, or how it, at least this is only in the United States, but it is again, if you like this sort of thing, this channel is the sort of thing you'd like. He also does a little bit of other, just drama stories that go on, like this one: an Iowa divorcee proposes trial by combat. But mostly it's things like, the illegal color shift trademark takedown inside a copyright trolling scheme, Jukin trolls itself, fighting the Elderwood trademark. So Amazon, Netflix sued for map used as set dressing. Wow. So it looks like they used it in the background, and someone tried to copyright claim something in their movie scene. Anyway. And I think you guys are going to sort of by osmosis, or sort of not osmosis, but indirectly, as I'm going to be talking about this course, because I have homework due every Monday now, so Sunday's probably the day I'm going to be doing my homework. Now, I've been setting it up all week. I've been like setting up all my homework all week, but I haven't recorded it. I haven't recorded the audio yet. So, all right, I don't actually have too much. I wanted to just take a little time to catch our breaths on the impeachment stuff, on the Trump stuff, because, oh my gosh, this week, it's been kind of hard to keep up with everything. And by the way, if you guys didn't know, I was on I was on a show last night. Actually, let me go back to my Twitter feed, because I'm going to have to go to the link. It was like 2:00 in the morning when the show started. We got done at 4, and they very kindly invited me for an after show. And I was like, guys, I have my own show in 8 hours, and I kind of need to go to the sleep time. Get some nice, cute little giffies. Let me go down to, I'll go into my mentions. I think that's probably the fastest way to get to the right link. Because I can't remember, I think it was Objectively Subjective's channel, but yes, let's go have a look where that's going to take us. There was noise. Also a good intro. Yeah, so if you want to see me, we talked about impeachment here last night a little bit. Come on, bring it up. YouTube, come on. There we go. Yes, Objectively Subjective's channel. So if you don't get enough of me after this hour, you can always go back and watch that as well. But one of the things that we did on the show was to look at a Vox article that goes over... by the way, you guys, I think I will at some point somewhere, maybe on this channel, maybe mirrored somewhere else, but I will put up my homework videos on Creative Commons, because my whole goal is to try to make them into something that can be repurposed for work I do at GASIS in case I have to ever do a training on advising people on what various licenses are and what their current status is in U.S. law. So, yeah. Who is watching that? City Life. Yeah, I was on Snarky's show, right? But I think it was broadcast on the Objectively Subjective's channel, and it was a lot of fun. A really good group. I talked way too much in the first part. Well, whenever it comes to U.S. politics, when it came to talking about the impeachment and the Senate trial and all of that stuff, that's like, super geeky moments for me. So of course I was in my element. But then they had like this 25-minute conversation about how do I put this? Well, I was jumping in at a sort of in the middle of it, and so the premise seems to have shifted slightly as people had time to think about it, but it had to do with whether or not people could choose to believe something they didn't think was true, and then there was something about free will and determinism, and it seemed a little bit like they had had a previous conversation. So I just listened for that part. But that was fascinating. It was really interesting to hear people's takes. And I think there was a little bit of mix of speaking from experience and then appealing to philosophical terms. And I personally think that you should either discuss things like within a philosophical framework or discuss things within a psychological framework. But I think mixing the two, because when you talk philosophically, you're generalizing. You're trying to universalize your claims. It's not like some people have free will and some people don't. I mean, either you have free will or you don't, right? Or some people have predeterminism and other people don't. So if you're trying to speak more generally about determinism versus probability as the true way in which the universe exists, I guess, that to me seems a completely different conversation than the cognitive dissonance that people have to resolve if they have one set of beliefs and they're presented with another. So, but I mean, I just shut up and listened and let people talk because I didn't know enough about what they were talking about to have a useful contribution. And often, I mean, I do make it a point, if I can't say something useful, I try to just keep my mouth shut. That doesn't always work. Sometimes I do the wrong thing anyway, but... Hey, Mithril. Happy Sunday to you. Let's see. Is that, do you say that atote or atothe? That's a really interesting and beautiful name, by the way. Welcome to you. I'm hoping I'm catching everybody as they're coming into the chat to give you, Striped Mongoose missed you out. And I think that is everybody. So thank you guys for stopping by on a Sunday. Appreciate it. And we were just about to talk to something. Oh, yeah, about Trump's team. Yes, this is going to be an interesting time to be alive. I really don't have, I don't know, I'm, okay, so, thoughts. Let me collect my thoughts and make some eye contact with you guys. I'm so busy, playing with my screen that I'm not always looking at you, so apologies for that. I feel that at this moment in time, there's so much swirling. It feels like tornadoes of information that come up, at least when it comes specifically for the whole impeachment process. And I want to kind of focus in on that because I think in the Trump era we're getting better at handling information flying at us faster than we can think properly. I think we're getting better at sort of sustaining it. But what we don't have, hey Tufidi, is enough time to just sort of process it and go, okay, what's the big picture here? And it is certainly the case that because the Trump administration just, it's a barrage. It's like a constant downpour of nightmarish prospects and ideas and corruption. And you're just so busy trying to catch up with it and fight it off and deal with what he's done in the past that you can't even see what he's like working on now that you're going to have to learn about. So I just wanted to like whoo a little bit on the Sunday before we go forward. Let's see, we are caught in a political maelstrom, definitely. That's a very good way of saying it. I know that there's a line in Hamilton, in the eye of a hurricane there is quiet for just a moment, a yellow sky, just like this idea of a constant, storm, as you say. And what we're seeing, in my opinion, so stepping back, and I mentioned this too on Objectively on the show last night, but if we think about can we just hashtag not all Republicans. I think there were before, there are fewer now, people who believe that they were good people, white people in America, who were conservative and faith-believing people, who thought they were good people, who wanted to be good people, who bought into the GOP notion of meritocracy and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and the American dream and opportunity and meritocracy. And what, in so many ways I feel like I was blinded to this for so long. And now that the blinders are off, everything is racist, everything is sexist. When I look at the white supremacist history of America, I can't not see how it was set up by, it was designed to maintain white supremacy. It was about controlling the slaves, and it was about resisting and attacking and taking land away from native peoples. So the whole Constitution was set up to give exclusive power to white men. And it's still it still is designed for that. But we have this narrative that goes over the top of it, like mayonnaise on bread. You kind of cover up that part of the white supremacy with some mayo, going, oh no, this is tasty. This isn't white supremacy. This isn't institutional racism. This isn't patriarchy down to the roots. This is about meritocracy and freedom and ability and opportunity and life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Well, happiness, I guess it depends on if you want to quote Locke. or the guy who plagiarized him, Jefferson. And Jefferson totally acknowledged that. I've contended, and I'm not the only one, that the Republicans have been engaged since the Southern strategy on establishing a core of white power, an unassailable institutional protection for the power of, in particular, white conservative Christian men, to rig the system, to make sure that they and they alone ultimately can influence and decide, disproportionate to their percentage in the population, what the government looks like at every stage, the Congress, the White House, and in the judiciary. And they've not said the quiet part out loud. They've hidden this white supremacist, or white supremacy, can we say. The aim of it is to preserve white supremacy. White men's supremacy. So white patriarchal supremacy. They've done it by gerrymandering. They've done it through voter ID laws. And they've done it by through putting on conservative judges who will turn down the idea that Democrats in a population are a category of people, and when the lines are drawn such that it excludes them from ever legitimately getting one of their candidates elected, that's inherently unconstitutional, because it's designing one-party rule. And if a court says, no, there's no protection for your political views, it basically means the GOP could gerrymander itself into a permanent white. Basically, it's like what South Africa, if South Africa had voting. They would find ways of preserving disproportionate electoral power for the white population, the rural white population, and to downplay or to minimize the effect and effectiveness of people voting in the urban areas or in more diverse parts of the country. And that's it. Like, it's not that difficult. In Mithril, we appear to have exported white supremacy around the world. Well, it's interesting because, I was watching something. What was I watching last night? It was, damn it. Oh, yeah. Did I tell you guys about that kind of, I don't know, some sort of Protestant history show or History Channel that I think I mentioned on the Happy Hour. There's some guy, he's a lecturer at some theological department at some college. I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. I'm really good at remembering information. I am so bad at just I don't really care who you are, so I'm not going to remember your name. And that's terrible. I should be so much better than that, but let me go into my histories. I'll just look it up here really quick. Yeah, Ryan Reeves. It's called Pilgrims and the New World, the particular video. And it's, Ryan Reeves. He's a PhD from Cambridge, assistant professor of historical theology at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. Seems like I've actually a pretty cool guy. Occasionally he'll have some takes that are clearly for believing people, but 99% of my radar is up on that. My radar is up for Christian bias. But he does a very good job, I think, compared to even the education I got growing up in the late 80s and 90s. So, for instance, I don't know if you can see this at all, but he's got a section here about pilgrims in the New World. And there's an entire part about the way that Britain, when there's this myth, I'll just do a summary for you. You guys can check it out later. Because again, he's a believer, but if you understand that that's his perspective, you can count for that in the general presentation. The illusion in America that, what's the phrase I'm looking for? The myth that all of the people who came over initially and developed the colonies were seeking religious freedom. And they were seeking escape from religious prosecution. When in fact, the colonists were far more likely, colonies were founded for economic purposes, as Spain and Portugal had been given large parts of, just the Pope, who had nothing to, in a different part of the world, just decided, oh yeah, here, you get this part of South America, and you get this part of, this is just white European privilege, like not even privilege, just authoritarianism at this point. But with all of their gold and silver resources, now that they're just stealing and plundering and killing and massacring and enslaving people, Spain became much more wealthy. So Britain and France were driven into sort of a competition to do their colonies as well in order to keep up. They needed to start plundering and engaging in, apparently, they didn't need to, they decided to, in order to keep up with Spain, to do all the same things. And the French kind of had their trappers, they would go in areas and they would trap things and send them back to Europe. But the Brits really did colonies. They would send people over and establish a colony and try to get an economy going there. And because of the terrible weather conditions in the South relative to Northern Europe and the need for cheap labor, it was pretty much the British economy that really, because it wasn't just about like going and trapping, it was about a permanent residency, it was about permanent occupation. They really went into the African slave trade market and fed that, sorry. And I know that people were talking in Britain a lot about the history of slavery and the legacy of slavery. As an American, I was always caught up more in our history of slavery and didn't, until I think last night, really make the connection how it was the British slave engaging in the slave trade that allowed them to build up the economy for the British economy and the British enrichment. And then, of course, it was inherited by Americans because they were living there and they were the ones who owned other people and denied them all of their rights. But it went from, I think they said like 10 to 20,000 people were enslaved and kidnapped and brought to the United States, the colonies in particular, in the first year. But by near the end of it, the Revolutionary period, there was 250,000 people in the population were enslaved, which is a huge percentage of the population. So how did I get on this? How did we get from Trump to this? All right, what do you guys have to sing? They talk about Maduro as if he wasn't democratically elected. I don't know what that's about. According to the Monroe Doctrine, if they aren't capitalist a-holes, they can't possibly democratically elected. Yeah, capitalism doesn't care about governance, do they? Capitalism cares about profitability, and it's quite happy to collaborate with strongmen as it is to work within a democracy. Capitalism has no loyalty to a government system. The British Empire strip-mined the human resources of colonies. Yeah, they took its greatest assets, which was its human beings and their intellectual capital, their ability to solve problems and to build societies, to specialize and learn information, to cooperate and strengthen each other. So, yeah, it was awful. And we don't fully, at least definitely not in the States, we don't fully properly acknowledge it. 250 says the dispute over the Falkland Islands goes back to that. According to the Pope, the Falklands were supposed to go to Spain, but the British didn't care because they weren't Catholic. Yeah, 9/10 of the, oh, you're talking about the WAPO. Got it. Yeah, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Australian history is like U.S. history, but the Brits took everything they learned from colonizing the Americas to make it a white supremacist nation and dialed it up to 11. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. I can't not say that the way that whenever you have a power system that it basically privileges men, especially white men, and especially white men of a certain religion, that's just not a completely undemocratic, totalitarian, or at least authoritarian structure to build off of. And so the point that I see that we're like 40 minutes in. I don't know where the time has gone. We're only going to do an hour, guys, because I have to get my homework done. So just an hour today. But we'll probably be doing a lot of happy hours because of the impeachment trial this week. We just did a happy hour, which I've downloaded to do the podcast version of tomorrow on my lunch break, if I can get to it. And of course, I was on a 2-hour show last night. So there's plenty of me online. You won't miss me. But my concern about this long-term GOP plan is that they didn't plan for Trump, but just like sort of like impeachment fell into Nancy Pelosi's lap as circumstance and opportunity. I think the GOP are using Trump to advance that white supremacy agenda, that preservation of white patriarchy, the distortion of representation, such that 35% of the population, and it's white men, have 67 or 70% of the power in government and in the courts and in business, and 100% in most religions and social influences. So my concern is that, Congress right now is where Congress and the executive branch is where Trump is aiming his fire, I guess you could say. He is trying to reduce the power of Congress by ignoring subpoenas and obstructing them, also acting illegally by ignoring laws that they have passed and other presidents have signed. My concern is that if he got reelected, then, and there's been no consequences, other than being rebuked once by the House, and now impeached. Obviously, that's the most serious thing that the House could ever do within its power, and it's done it. But he's not going to be convicted. He's going to be acquitted for obstructing Congress in all its oversight duties. So if he does that and then gets reelected, you can just see him taking on the courts and just deciding, oh, well, the court said this, but I'm not going to do it. Because the Supreme Court has no enforcement mechanism. There's no Supreme Court police officer that goes and arrests you if you don't follow their proceedings. And if he is going to ignore what the courts do and do what he wants anyway, and the House can try to impeach him, but he'll just obstruct it, and the Senate will rubber stamp him anyway, how have we not become a dictatorship within 2 terms? Just because of, you can say it's GOP, but it's the white patriarchy, it's that white supremacy patriarchy that they're all focused on protecting. I personally find this all very troubling. And all right, so I guess so that was just it, kind of big picture. I think we get so caught up in the details in the moment, and we forget that there's a longer game going on here. That we might be thinking about it in terms of minute to minute, but we're only in the third. We might only be in the second quarter of a 4-quarter. That's how quarters work. There's 4 of them. Game. So if that's the case, we need to think more broadly and more strategically about this, the way that they do. All right, so what I think I'll do is I will wrap up with my take on the Warren Sanders thing. Since 250 asked, I doubt Bernie Sanders fans are going to like my answer, but I will be honest about what I think. But I'll see what you guys have to say too. I love living in a capitalist system in the sense that whenever someone complains about anything, I can just say, I see that you have some complaints about capitalism. Let's explore that. Mithril, giving him a high Lucky Wonder a high 5 on that. What did the pumpkin jackass break this time? The Constitution, pretty much. I'm also gonna pause. I don't want to watch the video. I want to stop the video. Just stop. Thank you. I mean, I'm not against the climate activist thing. I just don't want that just spinning on my thing. Righty-dighty. So, what's the last thing? Did anyone else see the horrifying poll suggesting lots of Republicans thought, yeah, we can actually look at that. This other thing about the Dynasty. GOP. Oh, Ivanka was also named in that. I think we looked at it last week, or maybe it was a happy hour. It's kind of. All right. Business Insider. Oh, this is not the right one. Nope, that's not the right one with the right polling. Oh, God. Here we go. I think we looked at this one. And now we're going to get another pop-up. Please give us money. Like, I actually gave them money for a while, so I don't feel bad about not giving them money. I subscribed for like 6 months. Yeah, 29% of poll. Sorry. Oh, wow. Sorry, but guys. I got the cough. I don't know what happened there, but suddenly my eyes started to water. Hold on a second. All right, do this and then you could try to wrap it up. I don't. What did I do? I can't even breathe properly or something. All right. 29% of poll respondents want President's son to be nominee in future elections, while 16% support the first daughter. So yeah. This is why, Franklin said it's a republic if you can keep it. If people who vote aren't willing to stand behind the principles and that we all agree to and would rather see their party in power no matter what, then we've lost the entire premise of what the whole point of governance was meant to be. If they go back to the monarchy, does that mean we can go back to the guillotines? That's an interesting question. But I think, other people were topping it. I don't know why they said Mike Pence, but apparently 40% of Mike Pence. That would be just name recognition. 26% Nikki Haley. But 29% said Donald Trump Jr. So yeah, they just want to go back to hereditary monarchy, really. They don't have to think then. Just let a strong man who is a racist and a sexist, sexual predator, be in charge of keeping women in their place and brown people out of the country. And then they can get on with their business of shooting things. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, too, the extent to which they've gotten power in the last 5 years when they had no political credibility whatsoever in 2015. Yep. They've done a good job. I mean, you have to hand it to them. They're complete Mistkerl. You can say the Germans for the B word, for whatever gender version you want of the B word, in terms of monetizing the presidency and undermining constitutional norms and protections. All right, so my take on this, for the Bernie Warren thing, for those of you who don't know, I don't know how you cannot know at this point, but Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been having a dust-up. It's apparently pretty much, they're trying to put it behind them now. This is why I don't know why you guys want my opinion on this, because presumably the whole point is trying to move beyond this stuff, but you want to stir up shit, so, oh no, I said a bad word, now I'm going to demonetize the whole day. Actually, my whole channel is always for adults now, so basically I don't get full green monetization, I only get partial monetization. What is it called? Is it SPAT? Can you get a result from that? Okay. 20. Okay, sexism, honesty, and the best way to govern. Elizabeth Warren's, so there's starting to be a dust-up between the two camps. As you guys know, they're basically fighting over the same voters. From my personal opinion, looking at it from the outside, they wanted a détente so that they could spend more time attacking the moderates and put off attacking each other. You cannot have a campaign where only one person wins, where you have a non-aggression accord throughout. You can't. You might as well just not run then. Either you're running to win, or don't bother running. Get out. GTFO, because you're just taking up time and space. But initially they wanted to focus their joint critiques sort of more on the moderates than each other, so they had this sort of non-attack pack. I think there's an empirical case to be made that the Bernie campaign, maybe not Bernie himself, but the Bernie campaign violated that pact, at least according to Elizabeth Warren's perception of it. And there's something that apparently was sticking in her craw for a while. She, her staff related the story that during a meeting about the election, Bernie Sanders said something that Elizabeth Warren perceived to be about women's electability and whether or not women could be elected. And the Bernie people pushed back on this pretty hard. One of the quotes was, "Of course, I think a woman can get elected. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote." Of course, she wasn't elected. Getting the popular vote and being elected, actually two different things. So I thought that was a clever sidestep of the actual issue and the actual content of Warren's critique. But the basic one was she had the perception that Bernie was not convinced. I have my own take, but basically came out to, like, women can't win. And to be fair, I've actually heard that from Sanders supporters. Jake, of YouTube fame, was putting out this idea, well, even if 1 or 2% of people are so sexist they can't see themselves voting for a woman, is it really worth risking putting Warren on the top of the ticket and having those sexist people be the margin of error? Why don't we just, I know it's bad, but let's just not vote for the woman, because it could be the difference. Some people's sexism could be the difference, and let's just stick with the guy, because women will vote for men, but some men and women won't vote for women, which I think is a very bad argument. But so that allegation came up. Bernie Sanders pushed, and his campaign pushed very hard against it. And all of this was happening the day before the last debate before the Iowa caucuses. So they had their little dust up on stage where they went back and forth, and both of them gave their takes on what they wanted to say about that meeting and their views on it. And then apparently the more controversial part came afterwards. I'm going to be honest. I think that this whole thing, I'm just going to call it this conspiracy theory I see from the anti-Warren people. I'll just call them the anti-Warren people. That Elizabeth Warren had this mastermind plan of going over to Sanders when she didn't know but hoped there would still be a hot mic on, her mic would still be on, and with the plan that the media would hear their exchange, which would, also, and Bernie would say something that would make him look bad. And the media would listen to that and report on it. Like, she had to, that was she had this dastardly plan all worked out ahead of time. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that borders on nonsensical. Here's what I think happened. They had their exchange on the stage. And Elizabeth didn't want to inflame it on camera, but she also she's like, I need to talk about this now. I need to address this right away. And so I don't know if we've got the clip of them, if this has a clip of it. Again, you guys can disagree with my take, but I'm telling you my take is I'm pretty sympathetic to Warren here, because I think what happened was, Bernie Sanders has a long track record of being dismissive of identity politics. And he said contemptuous things about reducing Clinton voters down to, she's a woman, therefore I'm going to vote for her. When the fact is, having someone who represents you can be a part of your calculus. That would be like Bernie Sanders making fun of saying someone, well, he's a socialist, so, he's going to vote for the socialist just because he's a socialist. It also works like that with representation when it comes to issues of, like, ethnicity and, your gender identity or your lived experiences. And so I have no sympathy. Like, I have very little belief that Bernie Sanders values the arguments of identity politics. I think he sees them as less important than class. Everything comes second to class. I don't know how you get sexism in religion from class divisions, but everything is class. So let me see if I can get to get the video. Yeah. I won't play the sound on it, but let's take a look at the body language, at least. And I'm also like, who approaches who? Because I have a feeling that there was a bit of sort of a mutual approaching. Okay, 3 minutes. I'm going to go to the end here. Do they even bother to have the end? No. All right, well, I'll keep describing it. At the end of it, I can't remember who walked over to whom. I think this might show it instead. So, all right, so let's just look at this. They're standing there. Elizabeth, they both see each other. He reaches out her hand, and she's like, I'm not, I have something I want to say to you first. We're not cool right now. And what was interesting to me is that her body language, I recognize this. and this may be the reason why I have a way more sympathy with Warren than Sanders, is I have a lot of sympathy, or at least I have a background of understanding and compassion for a woman who's felt like she's been but someone has directed sexism at her or mislabeled her or whatever else. And it's interesting to me that she walks up to him and she does not make an accusation. She makes this sort of conditional statement. So she doesn't say, you just called me a liar. That's not what she says. She says, I think you called me a liar on national television. Now that's much less aggressive because it's basically saying, this was my perception of what happened. I think that you just called me a liar on national television. So that's what she says to him. And then he says, what? And rather than restating it with anything else, like saying, you called me a liar, she repeats herself. I think you called me a liar on national television. So that's what's happening here. That's where she's saying, I think you called me a liar on national television. What? And then she repeats it. I think you called me a liar on national television. And then he does a block, right? He's telling her stop. And what he says in this next part is, let's not talk about this right now. I don't want to do this right now. Something like that. Let's talk about this at another time. And her response is, anytime. He's like, he says, stop. I don't want to do this on stage. Let's talk about this privately. And her response is invitation. Anytime, right? But so we're going to watch that happen now. Stop, stop, stop. He's telling her, we're going to talk about this some other time. And she opens up her hand. She's like, yeah, I'm receptive to that. Anytime. We can do that anytime. Her body language is open. But, and this is why I don't like Bernie. I think he's an egotistical, arrogant, self-centered, narcissistic man-child. So now he's just had this reception, like, I think you lied about me. He wanted to diffuse it, but he emotionally reacts. And men get to do this. Men get to be snarky and angry and have temper tantrums, and they don't get flack for it. And if women show emotion or we get angry, we're just torn down for it. So I'm also angry in this exchange at the pure sexism, the benefit of the rudeness of what Bernie does. If a woman had done it, if Amy Klobuchar had done this, for instance, she would be like, there would be jokes about her menstruation and all that kind of stuff. So he, just to recap, she approaches him with a conditional statement. Yes, it's a negative statement, but it's like, I think you just called me a liar on national television. His body language has been, stop. I don't want to do this now, right? I don't want to have this conversation. Let's talk about it later. And she says, okay, yes, she's open. But now he gets emotional and he makes a counter allegation. But he doesn't say, I think you called me a liar. He just says, you called me a liar. So he here emotionally has a temper tantrum. He points at her, he gets mad at her, and then he basically makes a pushing motion with his body, like, I'm done with you, and he walks away. It's incredibly disrespectful, especially since she's not made a direct accusation the same way he did, and he is trying to make a power move by saying, I'm gonna call you the name you just called me and turn around and walk away before you have another word, a chance to say another word. I'm disgusted by this. This is exactly what I don't like about Bernie. So let's watch him, right? You called me a liar. Stop. So watch his body language. It's always about stop, stop, stop until he becomes accusatory. Oh, didn't go far enough back. So basically, his body language is, okay, let's tamp this down. And that's where he's like, you called me. I still go, it's actually really, really fast. I forgot this is only like 24 seconds. So here he is, like, tries to reach out to touch her. Then he's like backing off, like, okay, let's not talk about this now, to a finger point to a push. That's what he does. He's like handshake, wait, point, push in his body language. He's calm. And she's like, now, he's like, you called me a liar. Shut up, woman. Shut up and go away. So, yeah, I don't have time for his bullshit because I think he's sexist. I think he did what I think. And you guys asked, Fiddy asked for my opinion. You don't have to like it. If you don't want it, just don't listen to this part. but I'm not going to change my mind because I don't believe that Elizabeth Warren just made this up. I think it would be ridiculous for her to make up something whole cloth and attribute it to Sanders and then go public with it. I mean, it's beyond belief for me. And he has form. He has a record. He's got, receipts on saying things that are very, very dismissive to identity politics and to women and voting for women candidates because women want to support women, because we want to see people like us have a chance. And it doesn't strain credulity for me to think that Bernie Sanders made a really snarky, crappy, anti-identity politics remark about women and women voters. And what he had in his head and what came out of his mouth were probably not entirely mapped on. And what Elizabeth Warren heard was something that he didn't think he was saying, but came across to her that way. And so she thought she was accurately interpreting his anti-identity politics comment. And I think it was I think it was probably some sort of misunderstanding. But that I also blame Sanders for the way he handled it, because he could have, especially with this non-aggression, this sort of non-attacking thing, he could have opened the door for, while I have utter respect for my colleague Senator Warren, I do not think that I would have made a statement in that way. Perhaps she is mistaken. Perhaps she misheard me. Perhaps I misspoke and left out something important. But I think that we both agree, yada, yada, yada. And he didn't. He was angry, aggressive, defensive. Because that's how he always is. He's always angry and defensive and aggressive. So, yeah, and I don't necessarily think that Bernie is sexist. I just don't think he values intersectionality. I think he does it performatively, like through hiring, and but not in a meaningful way. Like his recent comments, he did it again on race. He he made comments that a bunch of people were side-eyeing, and I'm not saying here, like, I think Biden is better, right? People ask me for my opinion on Sanders, so I'm not like saying, Bernie because I want to push someone else. I'm saying this guy has problems. He's not the perfect candidate people want him to be. He's got issues on really coming across as being tone deaf and unsympathetic when it comes to, I know, it was Tim Rice. I can just look at Tim Rice. There's wise, Tim Rice. What am I thinking? All right, then I'm going to wrap this up because I really need to do my homework, you guys. All right. I think, that's not the same one I'm thinking about. Where's my, hold on. Dang it. Let me go back to my profile. Sorry, guys. This is it. Apologies. Let me go to my likes, because he's been saying some pretty, I think, on point things, and rather than repeat his ideas. Oh, can we get some distraction here? This was hilarious. This is the president getting ganked by, was it the president of I don't know where? He just pulls him off balance. That's such a Trump move. It's hilarious. Yank. Things that make me happy in this world. All right. And then I will be done. I have so many things that I like on my Facebook thing. George Conway. I normally don't do him, but in this case, he had a pretty good take on something. I thought for sure I shared that out. Anyway, how am I not finding Tim Wise, the Tim Wise I wanted, unless he got thrown off. He was complaining about burners responding to him. Maybe he got his entire account shut down from false complaints. I don't know. Let me go down here. I'm trying really hard, you guys, to find the proper thing for you. It's when we do a live show. Can you hear my stomach, by the way? It's really growling. Oh yeah, live from DC. It's weird that I'm not seeing this. And I know for sure. Here he goes. Yeah, I'll just go to his January 18th. It shouldn't be too far away. So as you guys know, he's a really big advocate for racial justice. And he's been dragging everyone. He's been dragging Biden or... oh my God, yeah. Biden and everybody else on stuff. It looks like reporting people. There are a bunch of reports. People were Bernie stands were trying to get his account shut down because he was criticizing him. Where is this? MLK holiday, the 18th. Sorry, guys. I really didn't mean for it to take this long. I'll do tweets and replies to be my last chance, and then we're going to wrap this up. This is really annoying. Sorry, y'all. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Let's just one critique. Because when Bernie talks about race, he sounds no different than any white Marxist for the past century, and that means he hasn't really kept up with the research and analysis in this area, which is not acceptable. He also goes on to kind of criticize him. Yes, I think this is actually the thread I'm looking for. Can I go up, please? Yeah! Bernie doesn't get intersectionality. He thinks class is prior to race and everything else. Read intersectional thinkers. Don't bash identity politics because those identities are part of intersectional thinking. By all means, ask Kimberly Crenshaw, who developed the concept of intersectionality, what she thinks about Bernie's race analysis and intersectional thinking. I can ask her for you if that's easier. Kim, like me, because apparently they've talked about Bernie's opinion, apparently believes Bernie has a lot of strong points to recommend his candidacy, but that doesn't mean he can't do better on those intersections. They need work. God knows Joe's got a lot more, as do Pete's and Warren's do too. But that's just it. We can critique someone to do better even while supporting them in other ways. I want candidates to do better on these things. Period. Being better than others or better than most is not enough. And for those of us who mostly do race work, it's maddening to hear progressives make such easy mistakes on race. Just like for folks who focus on mostly class, I'm sure it's maddening to hear people who do well on race and gender botch class analysis. All of us can do better and should push each other to do better. And when a person runs for president, we need to not be satisfied with the fact that they are far more progressive than anyone before them. That's great, but giving a pass on race analysis is not okay. And I feel the same when it comes to intersectionality and sex. So, if I look like Peggy Hill in general. Oh, maybe. So that's my take. And if you don't want to hear cranky things about Bernie Sanders, don't ask for my take. Because as you guys know, he's not my preferred candidate. I'm never going to vote for him in the primary. Because I don't vote for people who stab the Democratic Party in the back. And if he wanted to be a Democrat, he wouldn't have quit the party and only joined it when he wanted to run again. So I want someone to lead the party and the country, not one or the other. And I got a haircut. So just to wrap up, I did get a haircut. I have bangs. You can see my eyebrows now. So when I wait too long, I go from 20s to 60s. I just go from flapper to mod. And I was definitely getting to that mod look. So it's nice. I've got my little fringes again, and I've got my cute little squared off thing. So, how long will it take for us on the left to realize the real enemy is the Mango Mussolini? Well, we're in a primary season. That's what primaries are about. Elections are about differences. You don't go out and say, I'm just like everybody else. So, I mean, the whole point of a primary is to have a fight. It's kind of difficult to have a fight and not have a fight. I think there are respectful ways and there are disrespectful ways. And I think that there are ways of disagreeing that can strengthen the party. And I think that there are just destructive ones. But ultimately, there can be only one. And they have to fight. That's the way. There's no second place. There's no joint, president, vice president on the Democratic ticket based on how many delegates you get. And if they don't really want to be president, why are they running? So every single person has got to be figuring out a way to beat everyone else. And it can't just keep being nice to people and beat up on them. So Yeah, you kind of have to be a Democrat to have a chance. It's a two-party system. Well, hate the player. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, that's set up, the way that it's set up is first past the post. So if people want to, don't just yell at the Democrats for not, that's the way the system is set up. If you want PR, work for PR. But, I'm not going to make an excuse for Bernie joining and quitting the party at his convenience because he's too lazy to build his own structure. He'd rather just take other people's work over, and then when he doesn't get his way, just quit it and walk away from it and then complain about it, even though he could have had 3 years to make things better. He could have, been actively involved in sorting out the superdelegate issue exactly how he wanted, but he walked away. So I don't care what his thoughts are on the convention process. He took himself out of it. So, yeah. But like getting mad at the system, if people don't like the system, they can change it. There are other voting styles and voting systems. So imagine having a president where your main criticism is they're good on class politics but bad on identity politics. Well, imagine having one was good on identity politics and not on, why do we have to sacrifice identity politics for class? This is my point. Have a candidate that can do both. Find someone who can chew gum and walk at the same time. And I don't believe that person is Bernie. So, there you go. I was like, I don't start this stuff. You guys ask me. I don't deliberately provoke the Bernie stuff. But I'm never going to be convinced that he's a good candidate for our party. So, and I don't know if either of you can vote. All right. It doesn't necessarily stop. So there's the American system terrifies me and how it prevents actual third parties from forming. Well, I mean, there's a lot of other elections besides president. And we have seen Lisa Murkowski did a write-in candidate in Alaska, right? So she ran for the Republican nomination, lost, ran as an independent, as a write-in, and won. So there's nothing about the system that stops you from doing it. It just takes a lot of time and effort and work. So there's no active dissuasion. There's nothing that says it has to be the Democrats and the Republicans. We could have another Whig party, vying for stuff. So I think there's a lot of hand-wringing without appropriately understanding like what the system actually is and how it's worked in the past. Okay, well, you think I was fair? Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Bernie, like I said, I don't think Bernie said, I don't think a woman can get elected. I think that he probably said something along the lines of, being a woman isn't going to help you get elected, or being a woman isn't going to be enough to get you elected, or being a woman isn't going to, or like women aren't going to yada, 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 in his contemptuous identity politics way. I don't think he doesn't think a woman can get elected on principle. I think he probably thinks being a woman has some disadvantages, and that you can't count on women to support you or whatever. So, all right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for the show. You learned about Creative Commons licenses. I'm going to go record my audio from my tutorial video so I can get that done before midnight tonight when it's due. And we got to see a little bit about a big picture about the Trump stuff and have a nice little chat. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Sunday show. I always enjoy my time with you, even when I get slightly irritated because people want me to talk about Bernie stuff, and I really don't like talking about Bernie stuff because you guys, all you do is hate on me for it. You ask me stuff and then you hate on me, and then I get crap on Twitter, which is another reason why I really don't want to support Bernie, because I don't want 4 years of this crap. So, not my fault. I didn't start it. You did. But no, it was another good show, and I really appreciate you guys coming by and having time for me, giving me a part of your day. So, yeah, I think other than that, expect more happy hours. None are currently planned. Monday is the MLK holiday, and Tuesday will be the first day the Senate's back. So maybe we'll do a Monday night stream, a happy hour stream, otherwise probably a Tuesday or Wednesday. And if you haven't gotten enough of me, you can go over to Objectively Subjective channel and watch my appearance on their show last night. And other than that, there's no reason I shouldn't be here next Sunday. So at least for the live show, The Weekend Winters, all that's left to be said is that I have been Christy. You guys have been all awesome. Even the Bernie Sanders supporters, who are good people. And I know the difference between a Bernie supporter and a burner. So love you guys too. Have a good week, and we'll see each other very soon. All right. Bye-bye. If I can just get to the right window. There it is. Okay, now properly. Goodbye.